Paul had asked, can you have a refund which is applied to the next year be changed to pay a prior year liability? The answer is yes. If you've already filed a tax return and requested a carry forward, you can request that the money be applied somewhere else or even refunded, but that really should be done in writing. We won't change that carry forward without a written request. You could write, if there's a notice, which you have, you could always respond to a notice to request that. That will go directly to the processing division. Responding on MyTax is always the fastest way to respond. That's what we recommend. But if that's not available, you can make a written request in and send it to us by mail. That would go to the individual processing division. Their PO box is PO Box 19084. Springfield, Illinois, 62794-9084. That's a good one to know for individual income taxes. Business income tax is PO Box 19004. So 19084 is for individuals, 19004 is for businesses. Okay, excuse me. One right before that was got a question about K through 12 instruction materials and supplies credit is limited to $300 per person on the federal tax return. Are you saying we can take an additional $200 per educator on the Illinois tax return if they did spend the whole $500 by going to the 1299C and putting an additional $200 there? Mary Beth, if you're still on, I'm going to let you answer this one. This one was asked at 11:51 by Laura Prada.
It is a $500 credit. If you are, if you spend at least $500 out of your pocket for your classroom, it's a $500 credit that can be carried forward. Nowhere in the instructions does it mention anything about taking into account what you claimed on the federal.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. I'm looking to see now, let's see. We did have a question about, is it secure to email power of attorneys to us since the IL 2848 has social security numbers in the actual form? It is not the most secure way to submit that. The most secure way to submit a power of attorney, because it does have an EIN and or social security number on it, would be to submit that through MyTax Illinois. That goes, it doesn't have to be submitted by email at all, and that can be done as a non-log-on function. You just go to our website, mytax.illinois.gov. It is actually down at towards the bottom of the page in bottom center, we've got a section additional services, and we've got IDOR power of attorney submission. Now you do actually upload the form IL 2848, or in the rare instances, the form IL 56, but that's probably the safest way to do that. You can submit it by email, but anybody who's got security concerns, we understand that, and MyTax is what we actually recommend. I did get a question by a Barton Osher at about 11:37 asking, will payments be able to be made, that is specifically extension payments, are they going to be able to be made electronically through tax preparation programs? We do offer the ability to pay those on MyTax right now, but through tax preparation programs. Now, I'm not familiar, and I don't know if we've got anybody from e-commerce on the phone right now. Do we have anybody in our panel who might know whether third-party software can submit extension payments? I wasn't aware that that wasn't possible, but
Peter, you can, third-party software can do that. Generally, like Intuit, it's a bolt-on attachment. It's something they have to pay for. It's
okay.
Intuit restricts that itself.
Okay. So I think that's the answer there. And again, we've got, if you don't want to pay for it, we've got free options on MyTax. I think we had one more. On this one, I was going to reach out to Dan on. Does a tax professional respond to notices through a taxpayer's account or through the tax professional's account? I tried to do a little bit of quick research on my own, but didn't have a quick account to look up. So could a third party do that, Dan? And that's whether or not a third party has the option to respond to a notice.
Yes, sorry, Peter. If you're doing it through My Tax Illinois, then you would need, as the accountant would need your own account, and you would need third-party access. So if you're responding to a notice, you would be signing into your account, going to your client list, finding your client, click into the account that's associated there, and then you can follow those instructions we went over earlier to do that. But you have to either have been granted full access or the ability to view letters to be able to respond. If it's pay only, then you wouldn't be able to respond through there. It's all what rights you've been granted through the setup.
Okay, thank you, Dan. All right, so my copy pasted questions ended at about 11:52. I see there's a bunch more stuff which has come through the chat, so I'm going to try and go really, really quickly to see what we've got and what hasn't been answered.
Okay,
All right.
Peter,
Hey,
while you're looking, could I jump in for a second, please?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Jane, and I talked about the state sales tax holiday, and I jumped the gun. That was up for legislation, and it did not pass. So at this point, there will not be a sales tax holiday in August, and if anything changes, we'll let you know, and I am so sorry for the misinformation. If you have any questions, my email is jane.s.miller@illinois.gov.
Okay, I see a question at starting from the top here at 11:59 a.m. Got a question from R. Canizo. What is the net operating loss amount for C corporations in 2023? Craig, is there going to be any net operating loss limitation?
Sorry, Peter. It's still $100,000.
Okay, there we go. It's still going to be $100,000. That is not a change. And yeah, it looks like there was a question, how many polling questions did we have? 3 was what we had today, just so everybody knows. There were 3 polling questions. Aaron Horath has put his email address in the chat many times. There's one at 11:59, so if you missed any of those, please feel free to reach out to Aaron and explain what happened, and he'll make sure you get credit. I'm looking through here. My house was destroyed in a fire and we are rebuilding it. Is there any available credit for it? At this time, there are no credits that the Illinois Department of Revenue offers for rebuilding a house. There could be, I do not know, but there could be some deductions allowed federally for that. I'm not aware of any off the top of my head, but if they are deductions which are allowed federally and they go into and affect the adjusted gross income, that could affect your individual income tax liability for Illinois as well, since we start with your adjusted gross income at the top of your IL 1040 return. A question right underneath that is, seems every notice is coming with an EAR 14 to protest the notice. Why can't we just respond the notice as we used to? The answer is you can. You can still respond to those. And not every notice should have an EAR 14 coming with it. It's only certain types of changes will have the EAR 14 to protest. If you have the information, this is a general thing, you can always protest using the EAR 14. That is a taxpayer's right. But we can say that if you simply have the information we are requesting, in most cases, an EAR 14 is not necessary or even recommended, simply because having those EAR 14s usually requires those to take a little bit of extra time. Sometimes they have to be sent to other areas. Whereas if you get a notice and it's simply saying, say, we're looking for W-2s or a copy of your federal return and maybe some federal forms, simply providing that, especially by logging into MyTax and providing that, will usually suffice. But so yes, you can just respond to a notice, but the ability to protest and get all of the rights that come with the ability of the protest is always the right of a taxpayer to do if they choose to. And we send out the AR 14 every time that those protest rights are there. It's just always going to be there with anything that's protestable. Okay, got a question. Next question is Mary Beth said something about still being able to get a rebate. To which rebate is she referring? That would be the income tax rebates, which were all issued last calendar year. And most of those rebates should already be out the door by now. Question, I saw something about a weekly sales tax remittance. Can this be discussed or more information? Weekly sales tax, the closest thing I can think to that would be talking about quarter monthly payments. This would be for mostly ST1s. There are some other types of taxpayers, such as PST1 filers, who do the prepaid sales tax. Those are the motor fuel distributors most of the times. But mostly those are quarter monthly payments, which is for taxpayers who owe more than an average of $20,000 in sales tax, that is retailer's occupation tax, per month, would be required to make quarter monthly payments. There would be a little more information about that if you go on our main website, tax.illinois.gov, go to forms, sales and related, and the sales and use tax forms. You can find the ST1, or just search ST1, and you can find the instructions there for more information on quarter monthly payments. Okay. How should we handle a situation where an overpayment was required to be applied? I'm thinking too, like carried forward to a future year, but a refund check was issued. So the taxpayer mailed the check back, and if so, at what address? What's the time frame for having that overpayment applied properly? If there was some sort of data entry error or something on the tax return where there's good reason to believe that the department made an error, and it's usually only going to happen on a data entry, where a credit carry forward was checked, but instead a refund was mailed out instead. And the one situation where this will happen no matter what is if a taxpayer is deceased, because decedents don't carry their money forward, as they shouldn't have future income tax filings on their individual income tax return. Instead, it would be under an estate if there's still income coming in. But yes, a check could be mailed back. It would depend on whether we're talking about an individual or a business, but again, individual processing address is PO Box 19084, and business processing is PO Box 19004. Those are both Springfield, Illinois, and our zip code is 62794, and then dash the last 4 digits of the PO box. And so, yes, you can mail a refund check back and ask that it be applied as a carry forward if it was originally requested. This can also be requested after the fact, even if it weren't originally requested, but that does not necessarily mean that it will be applied timely. The time frame for that, I would have to pull up the IL 1040 instructions really quickly, but I can say just off the top of my head, the time frame for that is going to be based on the extended due date. Any requests made before the extended due date will be considered timely applied to the next year. After the extended due date, it's going to be really be based on when we receive the request.
Generally, Peter, it's the date of the request is what
Exactly. Yeah, generally it will be, and sometimes there's a little bit of variance on how exactly it looks from individual income taxes and business income taxes. Okay. And yeah, I see a few other things about weekly sales tax remittance. Quarter monthly payments, again, would just be that payments are required quarter monthly. Those would also be paid electronically. It'd be 4 times a month. But the return would still be filed monthly. At the most frequent filing for an ST1 is monthly. Let's see. Are we planning to have a 4th poll, or I think 3 is all we're getting, right?
3 is all we have, Peter.
All right, sounds good. is Walgreens still eligible for the high impact business foreign trade zone dividend subtraction? So any questions about these specific subtractions? They're all administered by the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. That's a DCEO. They should have information on their website. I had pulled that website up a little bit ago. They are at dceo.illinois.gov, but they maintain the lists of who are the high impact businesses and who are, where are the river edge and foreign trade zones, as well as the enterprise zones. Okay, let's see. Got a question. Where can instructions related to the RUT 7 for lease purposes be found, as they're not included on the Illinois RUT 7 instructions? Well, generally, if someone, so the RUT 7 is used specifically for taking an exemption for a vehicle when that vehicle is used as rolling stock. So if there is a purchase off of a lease, the purchaser, the new owner of the vehicle, would be the one documenting that the sale is going to be subject to rolling stock exemptions. And depending on what is going to be filed, a lot of times this would be an RUT 25, which is going to be filed. So if you're buying a vehicle off of a lease and this new purchaser who's buying it off of a lease is going to say, yeah, I'm going to be using this vehicle as rolling stock, the RUT 25 actually has a box in step 4, box C, where you provide the certificate of authority number, and that's where they would take the exemption. It wouldn't necessarily be in RUT 7 they would have to provide to anyone, unless this leasing company is also registered in Illinois, in which case you'd provide a RUT 7 to the leasing company so that they know they don't have to collect tax on the sale of that vehicle at the end of the lease. So it's not really necessarily going to be much different than if this were just a normal purchase. Okay, got a question that says, I had 3 taxpayers receive late payment penalties for payments made on April 18th electronically. I've already written a letter and denied the penalty abatement. We're not on this presentation going to be able to answer any specific questions on any taxpayers' accounts. So you're always welcome to call in on our business hotline phone number and we can take a look at the account. Or if you have a specific denial letter, usually there is a direct contact person who made the denial, and you could always try contacting them directly. What's the direct contact for fraudulent filing related collections holds? Well, again, that's probably specific. We would really have to be looking at an account to see what collection area was involved with that. It could vary. So you want to call our business hotline, we'll be having a look into that. I don't know if it's been pasted into the chat, but I will read off the business hotline phone number to everybody. That phone number is 217-524-4772. And that goes to our same call center as the 1-800-732-8866 number goes to, but you'll usually get into a queue a little bit faster, and you're definitely going to get someone who is going to be able to assist you with any tax type, which we handle on our main line. We do know that sometimes you call into the main line, you might get somebody who says they're not trained on a certain tax type or only handle individual income taxes. Business hotline always handles all the taxes, just not excise taxes. Let's see. Okay, if a rebate was received by a deceased taxpayer who died intestate with no will, how can the check be reissued? Well, that would be a situation where you'd want to send the refund check back with an IL 1310. There should be hopefully somebody, obviously there's somebody who knows this, they've received this check and has some interest in cashing it. So they should be able to send that back to our individual processing division, and include an IL 1310, which would have all of the information about who that check could be issued to. A new client, which is a holding company, and formed a new business in November. They forgot to register with the RAG1, registered Friday online, have not received the letter. Can they still pay the past 180 tax as long as it's before December 31st? They certainly can. I pasted this into the chat before, but I'll say it. Any payments for business income taxes can be made with the voucher so like, for example, if it's a partnership, they would use an IL 1065V, that's V is in voucher, and they would be able to pay that at any time. Now, again, what we look at more importantly than anything is the date that the money is paid. So if it's paid on time, that could still be fine. If they receive penalties and they believe they have reasonable cause, they can always request a waiver of any penalty by responding to a letter in writing.
Peter, as well, since they were formed in November, they should file a 2220 and annualize. They wouldn't have the estimated payment requirement, or as much of an estimated payment requirement if all their income is coming in November and December.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Who can I contact about the K through 12 educational materials credit? Again, business hotline. It's a great resource. We can help you on the main phone line. So people are saying in here that DCO doesn't maintain lists of these, or they won't give out the lists of names of companies. That if that's true, and that may be true, that may just be how it is. Unfortunately, the Illinois Department of Revenue, we don't administer or maintain those lists at all. Okay, starting to catch up here. So there's been a few other questions about how the educator expense credit in Illinois, because there's a federal deduction, should there be an add back to the adjusted gross income because there is a federal deduction before the adjusted gross income? I'm not aware. I'm going to pull up the Schedule M really quickly to see if that's something we require an add back on. Mary Beth, if you know for certain, you're welcome to jump in. But
I went and looked at the 1299I, and nowhere on there does it mention that the federal needs to be added back in anywhere
okay,
in order to take this credit.
okay, yeah. So that sometimes you'll be able to get a little bit of extra from Illinois because the federal will give you a deduction. We start with the AGI, and then we'll give you a credit as well. That happens sometimes. We don't always decouple from everything they do.